Welcome back to We're Not Your Typical.
Today we have on the show Jess. She is a mum to a 7-year-old boy who has PDA.
Jess teaches us all about what PDA stands for, Pathological
Demand Avoidance.
Welcome back. We are back again. Lovely to see you, Jessie. This is Jessie, for anyone that doesn't know. Jessie is here to talk about PDA with her youngest son.
Yep.
Jessie. No, not Jessie, sorry. Maxie. You are Jessie. So talk to us. Tell us, what is PDA?
So PDA, something that we had never actually heard of until about 4 years ago, is pathological demand avoidance. So basically, it's when a child or an adult has a loss of autonomy. And that loss of autonomy when you are a child is something as simple as, can you put your shoes on? Can you come down the stairs? Do you want your drink? And it's basically, they go into a fight, flight or freeze mode. And basically then they get so dysregulated, it becomes a lot of the time, it is physical outbursts, like hitting, kicking, throwing stuff. I mean, we're very good at dodging things in our house now. And yeah, they just constantly are in fight, flight or freeze. So they're just battling every day, normal requests they see as a demand.
So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I'm quite new to this world. To me, that sounds like autism. Like, what's the difference?
I think with autism...
Does it come hand in hand with autism, or is it a totally separate thing? Or can you have PDA without autism?
No, so the way, and this is like the maddest thing the concept that we are still cannot, that is really insane, especially in the UK. And it seems to be across the world, in America, Europe. PDA is not just a primary diagnosis. It becomes, they have to have a profile of something. PDA is profiled within ASD or ADHD. But a lot of even medical trusts in the UK will not put PDA in a profile because it's not an actual diagnosis. People err on the side of caution. They kind of don't want to be putting PDA into a profile because you've got oppositional defiance disorder, which again, it's quite similar traits, but again, it's just one of these ones that it's a grey area still.
It is a grey area because it is a grey area, but it's an area that I keep hearing lately. And I don't know whether it comes more with age, because didn't I say in a podcast a few weeks ago, I feel that Callie has PDA without really kind of knowing what PDA is, but what you're saying does make sense. She can do one day of like getting herself dressed beautifully well, be totally organised, got all her shit together.
Yeah.
And then the next day I'm like, right, go and get your clothes on. And she literally says, no. And I'm like, but you did it yesterday.
Yeah.
And she physically cannot do it. And then it just causes atmosphere because it's really annoying.
Yeah, and it is. And, everyone's like, the key to, everybody sort of said, like, the best bit of advice, well, the only advice you will get given is, you just need to low demand. And you think, well, what does low demand parenting
That is
look
a
like?
low demand.
That is a low demand. But, it's the way that you speak to them. I mean, with Maxie, we found that, he was a really happy baby. And what I'm personally seeing with people that, speak to me, like you were saying with Callie, in those sort of early years up to really up to age 3.5, they don't really have many demands.
Yeah.
It's quite, they just dawdle about. They might do a bit of colouring. They're not really in a formal sort of educational setting. They might go to nursery for a couple of days. They might not, especially if people, with the nursery fee, your 30 or 15 hours. There's a lot of children that don't go to settings until
there's no demand on them because at that age they
not
can't
doing
actually
anything.
do anything. They can't do it themselves.
They don't do anything.
No, even if they're toilet trained, you still have to take them to the toilet. They
And
can't-
wipe their bums.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, and we've noticed, and people have started messaging me on my Instagram saying, we've noticed like a real change since they've gone up to a different, how they do age restricted rooms, don't they, in nurseries? Or when they've gone to school, and some of them, may have, especially post-COVID, haven't actually been in any form of nursery or education setting until they start in reception.
Yeah.
And we sort of have found that, well, for us personally with Maxie, it became very apparent when it got to like the later stage of like being three,
so
pushing towards that end.
So what are I hate to use the phrase, like the red flags, what are the signs of PDA?
I think the red flags that we saw in
Yes.
Maxie initially is just a general reluctance to do anything that he is told.
Fine.
So he will...
Even though you know he can do it.
Oh, yeah, he's so capable and he's so switched on.
Fine.
But his nervous system just doesn't allow him to do it. So, some days, and it can be sort of, some days you can't even put your finger on it. Some autistic children, they have certain noises, certain sounds that will be their trigger. And they're just like, no. Whereas with Maxie, some days it could be anything. He might be extremely hungry when he wakes up. He might have had a terrible night's, he wakes up, he doesn't ever have a terrible night's sleep, but he wakes up incredibly early. And then, he might have a little, a bit of a tiz with his twin brother. And then what is, you think is, this is actually normal. He's going to be all right this morning. You say, can you come and get your breakfast? And they'll be, no, I'm not doing that. Like, come on, Max. And then the hissing will start. Throwing things. And it's even sometimes, if he's sitting on the sofa and his drink's there and he's sort of without reach, get me my drink. And like, well, you can get it. Whereas before we were saying, you're quite capable of getting that drink. And then...
So he's got the understanding.
He
knows how to do things, but his nervous system physically doesn't let him.
It's that loss of autonomy. They have to, PDA children...
Sorry, I'm being really thick here.
No, Autonomy. So basically, just having the autonomy loss is being in control of a situation.
Okay.
So for him, say if we use the example of a drink, you would say, can you get your drink, or can you have some of that drink? No, I'm not getting it. Well, why? Because because you've told him to do something, he sees it as a threat, and then he loses that control, the demand, and he's lost that control because you've batted straight back and said, well, no, you can get your own drink, Maxie. All you've got to do is sit up an inch and stretch your arm, and you've got it. And he's like,
if he wanted to do it himself, he would.
Yeah.
So what happens if you do get that drink? Will he expect you to do that all the time?
But the good thing is you get the drink for him, and then he's got autonomy, so he's in control of the autonomy. So what will then happen is everything's okay. So there's no sort of pent-up building of things are about to get out of control. Like you can physically see with PDA children a lot of the time, I can see when the dysregulation is coming due to autonomy loss.
Is he aware of it?
Yeah, he's aware of it, and he can see, like, he will make physical changes.
Because I think that's amazing, because obviously your son is verbal.
Yeah.
And he has the understanding and the communication. You can actually talk about it with him to an extent.
And you can say to him, like, how are you feeling? And he will say, I don't want to get it. And okay.
But can he say why?
And he will just say, and he won't say why, but he will know that the demands are becoming too much, and he will just say, just get me my drink.
So this will usually happen when something's triggered him, as you said, when he's not had a good night's sleep, or his twin brothers wound him up, or something like that.
Or it could just be, if you think about a day in the life of, like, because the boys are 7. Think about a day in the life of Maxie. He's 7 years old. By the time he's already got dressed, he's probably had 25 or 30 what he sees as demands, which aren't demands. It's just like
life.
Normal. We're parents. I'm like, come on, I've got 2 other kids, got to get our shit together. We've got to get out. We've got to go to school. We can't. The whole world sometimes doesn't revolve around Maxie. However, it does.
Yeah.
Because if we don't use the correct language with him, if we expect, our expectation as a parent is, well, he's capable of doing this, so he should be doing it. Mm-hmm. And that is exactly where you go wrong as a parent to a PDA child. Yeah, he can do it, but his nervous system just doesn't allow him.
So what, do you do it for him then?
We do it for him, because the alternate is that he will just lose his mind because he cannot cope with it. And then we've got it out of control within 10 to 20 seconds where all you've got to do is go, right, okay, I'm just going to give him his drink.
I know, but don't you feel like a failure? Because I feel like a failure. I feel like my child is controlling me.
Yes.
Both my children control me.
Yep.
And I just do whatever they need. And it annoys me because I don't understand why I can't say, go and get your own drink, Callie. Yeah. And she'll go and get it.
I mean,
and then what about in public?
I'm just like, I must say, some days, for fuck's sake, under my breath about 100 times. But I think you have to, initially when PDA was first sort of said to us, pathologically demand avoidant. I mean, it sounds like they're a psychopath, right? Let's be honest.
It's actually horrible.
It's a horrible, horrible terminology, I think, for a child that just cannot, who wants to be in control. Because basically, they just want to be in control all the time. And that's what it means. In the US, they call it the persistent drive for autonomy, which
sounds a lot nicer.
Which sounds a lot nicer. It doesn't sound so like we said, pathologically.
You sound like a serial killer.
Psycho.
Terrible.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, when he's on a bad day, he can behave like a psychopath, and you are, everybody treads on eggshells.
Yeah. And how long does that normally last for? If he's having one of these breakouts or whatever, how long do they normally last for?
I think if we intercept it very quickly and nobody else gets involved, I mean, it can be distinguished and separated and, done very, very, we can sort it very quickly. I would say sometimes maybe 5 to 10 seconds is the quickest. As long as you swoop in very, very quickly and you manage to
get it before it gets
get
out
it
of
before,
control.
But nip it in the bud. Yeah. But sometimes you can nip it in the bud, and then something else will happen, and then basically it will just build up, and it will build up, and then we just have an explosion. And like you said, it's really sometimes when you're out, it is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Like sunflower lanyards. People are dismissive of children or adults wearing sunflower lanyards,
especially when COVID came in, because everyone now can
everybody
wear them.
had them. You can buy them off the internet. Somebody commented on my Instagram today. I was like, well, fat lot of good that is, because you can just buy them off Amazon.
Yeah,
you can.
And it's just some days I think when I'm out and about with Maxie, like he needs a sunflower lanyard, like hat on, jumper, scarf,
we feel you. We say this all the time.
I've said I just want to write it here on her head saying I'm autistic.
Yeah, because there is, and people are still really, really judgy of a child that is having a meltdown.
They just think they're being naughty. They don't.
Exactly.
But then this is what I find really difficult when it comes to PDA, because firstly, I thought it was more of an ADHD thing. With how you're describing it, it seems more ADHD, because I thought they are kind of a lot more like controlling rather than someone with ASD, because it kind of doesn't really make sense, because people with ASD need structure and routine.
Yep.
So why can't they, if it's at 8 a.m. and they go and put their shoes on, why can't they just do it as part of their routine? But they physically can't.
But Maxie, I mean, he loves routine and structure, but routine and structure and boundaries look very different for a PDA child. I mean, for Maxie, what we have to do, he was out of full-time education for 2 years. He started in mainstream.
Yeah, please tell us about this.
I mean, he started it, the cracks really started to show with Maxie that something wasn't quite right at the back end of, before we went up to like the preschool room in his nursery. The class got bigger, it got louder, there were more children.
And more routine.
And more demand.
Right.
Let's get them ready for school. Let's sit on the rug. Let's clap our hands.
Yeah.
And, it was loud.
Make them feed themselves, stuff like that.
And also PDA is they suffer from high levels of anxiety. So going to a place for a day left him feeling that it was out of his control, like he'd been left by his parents, even though he absolutely loved nursery. He loved it. The pair of them, him and his twin brother, they were just obsessed with it. And the team there was so amazing. But the physical outburst became quite an issue probably the last 8 to 9 months before they went to mainstream. And we had a visit, we had a few, the nursery manager had some serious concerns. There was a few occasions where the phone had gone off, like, you're going to have to come and collect him. Like, he's picked a chair up, he's hit another child, he's pulled glasses off one of the nursery teachers' face, like he smashed them, he's punched them. And, at that point, we were still not in denial, but I kept on saying to my husband, I just think he's bored at nursery. He's always been incredibly intelligent. Maxie's got this amazing memory. He remembers everything. He was able to count backwards really early on, which now in hindsight
makes sense.
Massive sort of indication that, he had some form of additional needs. But when we went to go and speak to the nursery manager, she said, maybe it's a bit of anxiety. They're really pushing, you're going to big school. And then that comes with a massive, form of anxiety for any child who's neurodivergent or not.
Yeah, sure. The transition is huge.
The transition is massive. They're in this like cute little place where they get cuddles all the time by their nursery assistants. And then it's like, bam. And they are very structured in the UK of getting children prepared for mainstream school. And then we were told, we're going to get somebody from the local authority to come and kind of observe Max and sort of see if he would fit into that. We sort of questioned it and said, well, but for what reason? We haven't had, that seemed really weird to us. So they came and visited and they sort of said, oh yeah, he'd be all right going to mainstream. We think, it's probably a little bit of boredom. And then
how was your reaction to that? Were you like, see, kind of told you so, like, what a relief?
Yeah, and I think Darren and I, my husband, we were not in denial, but we just kind of thought, I have got an older son. I just thought, they're boys, they're boisterous.
Yep.
This is how boys are. They are rough and tumble. And he's just, a little bit peed off. He's, and he doesn't like that nursery teacher. Because there were a few, kids generally like levitate, don't they, to people that they feel comfortable with. And I can't, and there was just sort of one that he kind of had it in for at times. And I just kept on saying, oh, he's just got a bit of beef with her. He's
3-year-old's got
he's
beef.
4, he's just got beef with this. No, because children are, they're funny little things. Like they like who they like. Then, we made the decision to split them because obviously Max is a twin. We made the decision to split them in class and go and separate them because we kind of thought, that might be good. They need their own independence, Maxie specifically.
Yeah.
And then they started mainstream and it went tits up probably.
Did they go to the same mainstream?
Same mainstream, separate classes.
Reception, this is.
In reception. And they are born in October, so they were like the eldest in that cohort for that year. So, they were nearly 6 when they started. When they and we were like, oh, yeah, they're going to be completely ready. But, that first month, it was a part-time phase introduction. They set half afternoon, half days, afternoon here, morning there. And then the full-time effect from like the middle of October, everything was okay. It was like, but again, it's a welcoming situation, isn't it? It's all new, everything's all shining, it's exciting. Yeah. And we kind of thought, I was right. I'm his mum, I know best.
Yeah.
This is absolutely fine. He just needed to go to primary school and he just needed to be more engaged. And then they went back after Christmas, and the cracks had really started to show then. He was sort of removed from the classroom. The school itself have been fantastic, but the layout of the school, it's open plan for infants. So you've got 3 class per year intake. So
it's a large
you've got 90 children
in
1 year, times 3. And, it's open plan. So he was removed sort of from the main classroom and sort of sat at the back, but he just was not happy. The meltdowns became more regular, but they then started to ramp up in terms of severity. Yeah. They weren't just like a little kick. They were like picking up chairs, pushing other children, hitting teachers.
And isn't it, by you being that mum, isn't it just an awful feeling?
Oh, because it's the worst.
So many people come back, my poor child got hit today, a chair got thrown, and you're like, what about the actual person that's the mother of the child that's dealing with it?
And, and I think had a little bit more in terms of, we'd had a little bit more experience because we've got an older son. And so we kind of know, I was going to collect him from school and the teacher would be like, oh,
can we have a word?
And
it literally gives me trauma.
And I could see him like hovering around by the classroom door, and it would be like, oh, Mrs. Townsend, could I have a word, please? And I'd think, right, here we go. What is going on? And it would be like, just to let you know that Maxie's thrown a chair today. He's been in the calm down, the calm room, but the calm room actually is just a like wardrobe, like a little classroom bit, which is still attached to the main classroom, so they can still see everything. But PDA children, they want to participate, but they're nervous. They just cannot. They just can't.
Or it's his way of dealing with not being able to by throwing a chair, or hissing or latching out.
Or it's how the language has been directed to him. You got to do this, you've got to do that. And he's like, well, I'm not doing that because you're telling me to. And now I feel threatened. And it's basically, this hierarchical command. He feels like he has to be at the top of the chain all the time. And, and a lot of teachers, it's like, well, I'm the boss. I'm the teacher. Well, actually, if we like rewind a bit and sort of say, well, why don't we try this? Yeah. Then, declarative language, which is how we speak to Max, works wonders because he feels like he's in control. It's all like this mad sort of game of like, let him think that he's in control, because then we get the desired outcome.
Yeah. How difficult, really, as a parent, that you have to change the way that you think in order for your child to then think that they are still in control when they're not.
It is one of the most difficult things to try and fathom, but it's, I'm getting used to it because, I'm mum and I'm the one, even though I work, I'm the one predominantly more at home.
Yeah.
But I know that my husband he doesn't think I'm throwing him under the bus here. But my husband and my eldest son, who's nearly 16, this is what they really struggle with is, they just think, oh, are you being too soft and fluffy? And I'm like, well, all right, you go and direct that sentence to him the way that you want to, and then you better get ready to
Give us an example.
Because something will come your way.
I know. Teach people, like explain how you would give a scenario for someone that's dealing with a PDA child.
The words to not say to a PDA child, you must, no, you have. It has to all be reworded. I wonder if we could get our shoes on by the time I got my jacket on.
Okay.
I wonder.
Make it sort of a game.
Yeah. I bet you can't get upstairs and get your pyjamas on by the time I finish counting to 20.
But
that
when
is what we
he's
do every
16
night.
And still living at home, he's going to be like, Mum, I know what you're doing. Surely.
Yeah. But
then you cross that bridge when you come to it.
I know, but surely there must be, you must think about that.
I think Jane's right. There's an element of you have to cross that bridge when you get to it. But also, from the interaction that I've had with PDA adults or sort of young adults and teenagers, is actually they grow into their behaviour. So they learn, obviously 7 people, he's grown up. Well, no,
it's
a
really hard age, 7, as a typical.
Yeah. And the thing that you find is that the older you get, Maxie will learn to manage that, and hopefully he knows his triggers. And some days he's still, he's quite aware of the fact some days that he does know that he can't do things. He really struggles with children's birthday parties. Obviously now, because he's not in mainstream school and he's at a specialist school, we don't have any interaction with the parents. We don't know who the kids are, which is another mind-blowing situation.
There's no communication.
You send a vulnerable child, ends up going to a specialist school, and then he goes on transport. We don't meet the parents. When we were taking him, you'd pull up at the school, the children and all the cars there, the door opens, they just get taken off. So you have no interaction with any parents or any children.
So do they not have play dates with kids at school?
No. So we rely now on Max's previous class from mainstream, who have been amazing, and he still gets he still gets party invitations, even though
lovely.
He's not been.
And it helps that he's a twin, though.
And it helps that he's a twin because everybody, we never expect Max to get an invite as a +1 because I've got kids, mate. Parties are expensive, and and it's chaos having kids parties.
Yeah, but so go back then. Sorry to interrupt so. By reception, things were really starting to crack.
So I think what had happened, he'd gone back after Christmas, and then he was sort of removed from the main classroom. And we weren't in denial, but I think there was that preconception that I had. Well, he spoke, he was verbal quite, quickly. Yeah, he didn't learn to walk very early on, but he had a twin brother. Jake did everything for him every time Maxie, and we didn't really ever have a concern. But obviously for PDA there is no sort of clear-cut indications until they start to get older, when the demands become more. Like we've said, they just sort of plod along, don't they? Sort of
I don't think you can diagnose a baby with PDA.
No, not at all, because it's a thing. I think as they get older
and they have more understanding of the world,
and the more demands are put on them.
I mean, it's it can be. It's quite a lonely place because, when we were sort of said, pathological demand avoidant, we were like, well, what does that mean? Is that is he autistic? I don't know. Is he autistic? Is that ADHD? And the school, and the Senko officer said to me, she said, "Oh, well, it's kind of like a form of autism."
So was she the one that kind of suggested this to you?
Yeah, she sort of suggested. She said, "We're really struggling with Maxie, and we just don't really know what to do with him, because of safeguarding. We have to protect other children." And I totally get that. I don't want my child, to be in a situation where, you know, a table's been thrown at them because, you know, nobody wants that. But again, you know, it was always that thing that now I'm becoming that parent that I'm having to then weigh up the situation of, you know, other children versus my own child's needs. And it's really difficult. And obviously, you know, Jake was thriving at school, you know, he's got his twin brother. But then as the stress started to build and Max's anxiety started to build, it then became, we ended up then having a nightmare really with Jake because he was seeing his twin brother who was then really upset. And we kind of plodded along from the Christmas term when they came back in the January in reception to about Easter. And, you know, we just sort of begged, borrowed and stole really. We were just like, please keep him in. You know, like we, you know, what are the other options? And then they went back after Easter and we were called in. Maxie there was like a fridge, you know, in reception, they have, you know, like milk and like, you know, their sort of vegetable snacks in this fridge. And Maxie had tried to push like a 5-foot high fridge over. And there were, you know, some really young children. And then, you know, we were really, really aware of the fact that actually there's something,
it's not... Obviously, it's not safe for the other children, but it's not safe for Maxie either.
But the thing is, and this is what I said, you know, what is happening to my child to get so angry and anxiety driven that his only way of being able to deal with it is pushing over a fridge.
Yeah.
And
he's not doing it because he's being naughty or he's bored.
It's his way of coping.
I mean...
No, but someone's getting him to that point in a way.
Exactly.
Because they don't know how to manage.
They don't know how to manage it in mainstream.
Yeah.
And also, it's not about how they don't know how to manage it. They physically cannot keep their eye on that many children.
No.
You have a teacher, 30 children, and a teaching assistant.
Yeah.
There is no way that ratio of 2 to 30 is an effective way of being able to manage even neurotypical children, let alone having a couple of neurodivergent children thrown into a classroom. When we had the phone call, went to school, and they sort of said, look, you know, this isn't working. We don't think he can be here full time. And we kind of sort of said, whoa, well, what do you mean he can't be here full time? No. And I remember saying to my husband, you know, is this have we caused this? Because, you know, if we rewind back to when we were at nursery, should we have pushed our local authority and then said, well, actually, maybe we should be looking at specialist schools? But again, because there was nothing really like quantitative in terms of...
And everyone wants that answer. Your kid is fine. He can go to mainstream. You're not going to kind of question that because you want to fit in and go to a mainstream.
And I think because he's a twin, I was, you know, the anxiety then that I had, oh my God, I'm separating him from his twin brother. They've never been away from each other in their entire life, apart from a short stint in hospital when one of them had pneumonia as a baby, but they'd never been apart from each other.
Which one had pneumonia?
Jake.
Okay.
And this is like another thing with pathologically demand avoidant children. There's quite a lot of people saying, you know, it's caused from trauma. And I just think, well, I don't think, you know, again...
How much trauma can you have at that?
Trauma is when the child's alive or while they're in the tummy? I'm not a healthcare professional, so don't be hating on me if somebody comes like commenting. But it is, you know, you are born with it. It is a genetic...
Do you believe that?
I think it is. But there are things that make his life better or things that make his life worse that I can influence, like environmental factors, his diet.
Yeah.
And, you know...
How does he eat? Does he eat well?
It doesn't stop eating. But again...
Everything?
But yeah, so for Max, for PDA kids, another really good sort of thing when that, you know, we noticed at school when it was starting to go really downhill was... They were giving him snacks all the time. And I sort of stressed straight away, well, I don't really want you giving him snacks all the time.
Oh my God, it sounds like me.
I don't want you giving him snacks all the time because, I'm like thinking then, oh my God, is he going to get like type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, I know.
Are we overfeeding him?
But they also did it for praise. That's what they used to do with Callie at nursery.
See, in praise, that is another thing that we cannot, you know, there was another trigger at school. Everything is done on reward charts. It's done on praise, which is not a good way for PDA children because, again, it's out of their control.
Yeah.
And expectation equals anxiety.
Yeah.
And if they don't reach that expectation, it goes wrong.
It makes them feel awful. And PDA children suffer from high levels of anxiety. So expecting a child with who's pathologically demand avoidant, it gives them anxiety. So, you know, these old school routines that the UK has for schooling, it doesn't fit a PDA child, and it doesn't fit probably a lot of children.
It's unbelievable how much you know about it, though, and obviously it's because you've researched a lot because you have a child with it. But for people that don't actually know, like yourself, I suppose, when you had all these thoughts about Callie, and it just kind of it just makes a bit more sense.
Questions myself, really. I hate when people tell me what to do.
Yeah, I mean, I know, same.
No, I really do.
So my husband asked me to do something, and I was like, I'm not getting that. And I'm like, who do you think? I was like, who do you think?
The funny thing is that my husband will actually say to me, I'm not doing it because you've asked me.
I know.
I'm going to diagnose him. I'm going to diagnose him.
Yeah, do it.
But going back to the school thing, the way, the reward charts, all of that, and then, the phone calls and then the meetings. I mean, he was excluded so he went down to, so the back end of the summer term of when he was in reception, we basically came to an agreement that he would be there all day.
I was going to say, you're going to do reduced hours.
We did a restricted timetable. And I was devastated. Absolutely devastated. My child.
You were that mum.
I understand
I was like, and I sort of argued it with the headmistress, who we've known for years because my eldest son went to the same primary school and we've had nothing but amazing experience. And then I was like, I absolutely hate her.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate her.
Fault.
She's making my child's life misery. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. And then actually, when he then he was on this reduced timetable, it was quite easy to manage with him. And I thought, oh, well, it's okay.
What was he doing?
It's like the end of the summer term. They're tired. Reception is a massive shock to any child's system.
Yeah.
Oh, he was just okay. He just couldn't wait to come out of school. Yeah. He's like, "Oh, what time are you picking me up, mummy?" And I'd be like, "Oh, well."
He thought he was the cool kid because he could leave early.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I said to my husband, "Oh God, I'm really starting to feel nervous about this now that he's going to have this reluctance to want to go back full time." So we just sort of bumbled on. We got through the summer holidays, and then when we went back for year one, that is just when the shit really hit the fan.
So at this point in year one, though, he didn't have a diagnosis.
In reception, he had no diagnosis.
No one-to-one support.
No, so he'd had...
And you were working off the fact that your nursery teacher had told you that she thinks he's got PDA.
Yeah, and she'd said, I've got 3 sons also. She said, my eldest son, he's got PDA. And I was thinking, this is a load of old rubbish. But it was the Senko at the back end of the reception year that had said, have you heard about PDA and being pathologically demand avoidant? And I sort of said no. And so she gave us some links to the PDA Society website. And that was really all that we were given. And then when we started looking, that really is all that there is out there.
Yeah.
There is not much out there for parents that, want to know more about PDA or, thinking,
I think it's not that they don't even want to know more. I think we don't know.
You don't know.
It's only something real recently that it's come into me, and then we connected on Instagram.
I think,
and I was like, you have to come on.
Yeah.
Because people need to know about this.
I mean, it's nothing that can be medicated, is it?
No, I mean, I think the only way that you can be medicated for pathological
ADHD as well
is anxiety. So then you're talking, that's then going into sort of not a treacherous zone, but are you medicating your child then for something that you're actually not too sure? Because Max has been diagnosed with hyper-focus ADHD, so he gets so obsessed with things, and that's, but we don't really, the ASD, the PDA diagnosis, we're so close to it, but I don't know what they're going to then say.
Has he had an autism? No, he hasn't. Has he had the assessment?
Yeah, so we've done, I think, 2 or 3 of the questionnaires. But again, I think takes years. But what we've done is now with the legal stuff changed with the right to choose, we found a private clinic that we've said to the GP, he was actually sort of paperwork-wise referred when he first started in reception. He's going to be 8 in October.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's taken 4 years for us to get here. I'm not waiting another 4.
No.
But even though it won't change anything for us because, he gets disability living allowance. He has access cards for Chessington and, and all the
important things.
Yeah, the really important things, because he feels like he's a VIP.
And so he should.
But I think for us, it would just be some form of, not even closure, but it's a recognition really.
Yeah.
And sort of just so that we don't feel that we're in limbo.
Yeah.
Because,
And that you're doing everything.
He's in a specialist school,
Yeah.
and, even his specialist headmaster, the specialist teachers, they, are all under the same consensus as us that Maxie is pathologically demand avoidant.
I thought you were going to say pathological liar.
No,
Every time you say it, it sounds like a serial killer.
I know, and it's a horrible.
So is he aware? Have you had that conversation with Maxie that he is?
So we've had to go to the doctors, and that has made me laugh out loud sometimes. You go to the doctor and because he's obviously clearly got PDA, but the way the structure it goes, it's like he's got ADHD. We do that assessment first, and the doctor said, "Oh, can you play with this, Max?" He was like, "No!" Kicked everything off the table, and then the doctor's trying to talk to him, and he's just ramping around this room, causing chaos. And I sort of said,
"Isn't that enough?" I
was like, "This is." He said, "But we're not here for that today. We're here for." And I was like, "Right, this is really pointless."
Oh, wow.
You're lucky you got him to kind of perform normally, because when you go to the doctor and you feel so ill, and when you get to the doctor, you feel so much better.
I had last week, because of the flu, I went to the doctor and she was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "I'm actually fine."
Yeah.
I went and I came home and I was like, "I'm dying." But it's just weird, isn't it?
I think, I don't think it's going to change him if he knows. He knows he's got ADHD, and he sometimes, when he has really, really bad days, and there's no rhyme or reason some days for the meltdown. Some days, he's just tired. His brain's been in overdrive all week, and really, he started a specialist school in October, a month after they started in year 2.
Yeah.
And he's never been in full-time education, realistically. So this has been a massive...
And he's there full-time?
And he's there full-time.
Does he love it?
He gets picked up at 7:45. He gets home at 4:15.
Wow. And how far is it from your home?
So it's about 9 or 10 miles, but obviously it's rush hour, the traffic's bad. So he leaves.
And is it just him in the car?
No, he's with 2 other children as well. And they're in year 6. So,
And he's fully accepting of being in a specialist school?
Yeah, so he...
As much as you can be at age 7.
As much as you can be. When he went back in year 1, and obviously he'd been on this reduced timetable for the back end of the summer term when he was in reception. It fell apart very quickly because the summer holidays. I'm in a position in my job that I can I have the entire summers off, and we go away a lot. And the demand is low.
Yeah,
he's in his own house. He's got his own TV.
He's got you doing things for him.
He's got his comforts. He knows the routine at home. As much as even though he isn't, he can. He has high anxiety. Maxie loves to be out and about exploring. So, we go and see people all over the world because, my job allows me,
that's very cool.
My staff travel allows me to. And there's never an issue when we're out and about, getting on and off a plane, going to new places. He loves it. But that rigid school environment, when he went back into year 1, I think he was there probably about 4 hours on the first day, and their table flipping had come back, and she and the Senko said, "Look, listen, we had she said we're going to call a meeting, but we really feel that he needs to be removed from school." And like I said, he'd had inclusions. Then he feels terrible. He got excluded. I think he got excluded in reception about 5 times. So then he wasn't allowed to go into school. So then it's, he's been reprimanded for a behaviour that he can't control because his anxiety leaves him in a situation where he goes into fight, flight or freeze. But majority, it's fight.
Yeah. So what's it been like in the new environment? Has he flipped a table in his new school?
No, he's absolutely fine.
Wow. So it's obviously his way of saying, "Get me out of here."
Yeah, exactly.
You're so
this
right.
is it, Jay. And this is what I said to Darren. So basically what had happened, so when they went back into when he started year 1, he very early on it wasn't working. I think by even before we got to the end of September, he'd already had 3 or 4 exclusions.
Yeah.
And then we went to go and see them at school, and she sort of said, "Look, listen, I think he needs to be referred to a PRU, a pupil referral unit."
Yeah.
And basically they work with the child, they work with school, they give you strategies and to try and integrate him back. And I was just...
I feel like once you're there, you don't go back.
Absolutely distraught. So he, and at this point, he's only just turned 6.
Yeah.
That's young as well.
I was like, pardon? They said, we're going to remove him from mainstream school and we're going to send him off to a pupil referral unit.
Do you know what that is?
For a term.
I only know because of school. It's basically like a school for children that are just not equipped for mainstream.
It's called a PRU. When I was,
I'm really sorry. I tell them to go fuck themselves.
So
Our
it's
homeschool.
PRU school. So when I was, I'm 45. A PRU school was like where all the naughty boys went.
It's naughty, or you've got parents that are in prison.
What did you say? Did you tell them to go fuck themselves?
I remember I was at work and I was sat with my friend outside work, and I'd
be distraught.
It takes a lot for me to get upset, but I just burst into tears, and I was like,
surprised.
they are sending my kid to
a naughty school.
To a PRU school.
At age 6.
It's a PRU. I said, and I was literally mind blown. And
What did you do?
when we so they sort of called me and said, I think he should go to this PRU school. And I was thinking, God, that's a naughty boys' school. Maxie is not a naughty child. He reacts to the environment that he's in, and he goes into fight, flight, or freeze. And within where we live in Surrey, we were basically told, like, if you refuse this PRU, that will be the end of your help and support that you get from the local authority.
Wow.
She was like, you have to follow these steps.
The protocols.
You have to follow these steps, or, if you want him to go to specialist school, they'll say, well, why didn't he go to a PRU?
Yeah.
Well, because the parents refuse. Wow. And then because you're not on side, you're seen then as a parent that is not helpful.
Do they do this to every child?
I haven't heard of this.
No.
So basically, I don't know, obviously.
Maybe it's because of Max's behaviour in the classroom.
And they just, sort of said, we feel that this is the next option for him. We need to prove that. And it actually worked out as a really clever tactical move by his mainstream school, because he went off to the PRU school for a term. He started in the January and he was there until Easter. He had a couple, packed him off in a car, age 6, by himself. And I remember the first day, I was like, oh my God, I would have been so much. He just went, bye, Mum. Got straight in the car, drove off in this Tesla, and I was there crying my eyes out. He just didn't, because...
Didn't faze him.
Because PDA children are so resilient. They are constantly, their resilience is so high because their nervous system, they're constantly battling between right and wrong and running away and fighting back.
So does he feel emotion?
No, I mean, he does feel emotion, but, even Max he'd become to realise himself that school was so stressful for him. And he only felt, and he said to me, Mummy, some days I don't want to go to school because it makes my head hurt. Okay. And I remember thinking, oh my God, and I'm just so hell-bent on making sure he goes to school, because that is what our children do in the UK. They go to school. And I remember thinking, oh my God, now I feel like the world's worst mum, because I pushed him and forced him into this environment. But we're also
following a
generation of stuff. That's it. Yeah, and that's how I was brought up. I went to school.
Yeah.
You do this, you do that, and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And he had a couple of really difficult weeks at the pupil referral unit at the PRU, and then he was just like a model student within a month. And they were saying, he's just amazing. He does so well. We went and visited it before.
Maybe he knew psychologically that if he did well, he'd leave.
And he said to me, oh, Mum, I love it. He said there was 6 children to 2 teachers.
Yeah, amazing.
They had, they had a sensory room. They had a therapy dog. I mean, he still talks about Gemma, the dog now. I mean, who calls their dog Gemma?
Love it.
Weird.
Love it.
Like a proper human
Gemma, dog.
Gemma, who, and he absolutely loved it. And then he said, oh, am I staying there forever? And then the anxiety then started to creep in, because I said, you've got to go back to mainstream. And he said, I don't want to,
so
Mum.
at this point you knew he was going back to mainstream? Because
it's only a short term.
Right.
So what do they do it
it's
for?
Almost like having a therapy and then going back.
I think the whole, it can work well. Some children, they may, like we were saying, some of them come from traumatic homes. They've grown up with domestic violence around them with their parents. They've got parents in prison.
Yeah.
They may have never have been to school for whatever reason, and then they're struggling. So it's a way of trying to give them strategies and look at logistics.
Take them out of such a big environment, strip them back.
Yeah, get the muscle memory in there for school.
So it's never a long-term thing at that place.
Never a long-term, it's
which
just...
I think is a fantastic concept for
it's
many children, but for you as being his mum and being offered this must have been so unbelievably distressing.
I still remember it. I was sitting, it was really, really, I just thought, oh my God, this is it. Is he ever going to go back to school? But, and it was amazing. He went there for, and he absolutely loved it. And school, his teachers visited them. They worked with the teachers at the pupil referral unit, and they said, this is what we do. We work on, focusing on doing well and that, this whole transition. And we were really positive. We were like, yeah, this is going to work. Then he went back to school after Easter.
So he did go back to
then
mainstream.
He went back to mainstream after Easter.
But you kind of had to do that, though. Otherwise, they wouldn't have referred you to anywhere else after.
So basically, then it completely fell apart. He ended up really just going to school for an hour a day.
Wow. What's the point?
But, even though we were really traumatised by the fact he had removed him from school and he was going off to this PRU, to the pupil referral unit, it actually did us the biggest favour.
It literally is.
It did us the biggest favour, though, because what it did is then when we, and then at this point, we've been allocated a case officer. We were like, he's not going to be able to go back to mainstream school. Like, that's very apparent. But we had to send him back because we don't want him off roll.
Yeah.
Because an off roll child is even harder to get placed into a school. And I just said, maybe I'll just keep him off school and homeschool him. And their mainstream school, like, that is the last thing you want to do, Jess. You need to make sure that even if he's here for 10 minutes, you keep him on roll.
Yeah.
Because schools
They'll
not
forget
want to
about
touch.
you otherwise.
You'll get forgotten about. But other schools don't want to, why is he not at school?
Well, what's the point of giving him a space then if he can't?
If you can survive with them at home, then they can stay at home.
Yeah.
But I feel like after you sent him back to mainstream, did it just, everything that he'd done in the other place, did it not undo everything, all the good?
I think
because then we put him back in that situation that we know he doesn't like.
And he got, he obviously got he got Max had an EHCP from quite early on.
When did you start the EHCP?
Started the EHCP. We started it probably, I think it was just before the Christmas when they were in reception, like the paperwork started.
So you started it then, knowing...
And it took, 7 or 8 months?
Yeah, 12 weeks.
But it, he had he had a one-on-one. But they just, even the one-on-ones are great, but again, we're starting to then find they're not trained. They don't know how to deal with pathologically demand avoidant children. No. So,
I think it's got to be so much better for that child being in an environment with like-minded people.
Yeah.
And feeling that security and that safety net, and not having that anxiety hanging over you every day because you don't feel that you're fitting in properly.
Yeah, and this is what, Maxie then became very aware that when he was at the PRU, he was really happy. And the dysregulation, for the first month, he was a nightmare. I am not going to lie. Because he was coming home and it was new practices that they were doing. And he was getting really, really upset. And then we had sort of 8 weeks of, having not like a normal child, but it wasn't chaos. The fighting was there, but it was just like normal sibling fighting, kicking and shoving, as boys do. And then when he went back, it just totally fell apart. And he ended up going for an hour a day. And we were just thinking, oh my God, how is this going to work? And then, we went to, out to a few schools, and they were straight away, we don't deal with pathologically demand avoidant children.
Wow.
They even knew what it was.
I was like, what? What do you mean? They're like, it's child-led learning, which is what it is, because the child needs to be in control again.
Wow.
So they're like, we can't do with that. And a lot of ASD schools will not touch PDA children because they do not have the resources and the time to have child-led learning.
It's so common with children with
I know,
ASD.
I know, it's so common.
It's so baffling.
It's like the most mind-blowing concept that you can't accept my child because it's child-led learning.
Yeah.
But if everything was child-led learning, then you probably
do
not
you
have
put
as
the
much.
Do you put the PDA?
Yeah.
In front of his ASD?
Yeah, totally. PDA, that is his main, that is, until we see it in black and white.
Yeah.
But everything, his environment, when he was his calmest, when he was at the PRU, because we made the environmental changes.
Yeah.
And that it is about that adapting to make his life easier, basically.
So what's it like with Jake?
I was just going to ask that question.
Does he understand it? Is he...
Jake, we've spoken to Jake and we've sort of said, Maxie, he's got PDA and he's got a different brain. His brain is different. It doesn't register, as the same as yours. Whereas, you could say to Jake, we say to you, can you get your shoes on? he's a bit like, well, do I have to? Max hasn't, but he'll just do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
come on, buddy. Like, let's get your shoes on.
Does he
let's go.
egg him on to do stuff? Does he
Well,
help?
but no, he doesn't egg him on, but he will be like, well, why if he's not doing it? Why am I?
Oh,
not
that's gotta be
doing it?
tough.
And it's like, oh, just
double
do it.
whammy.
Just
Double
get your shoes
whammy.
on.
It's like I went to Spurs on Sunday with my middle child, and she is neurotypical.
Yeah.
We won't talk about Spurs because
Yeah.
that was horrific.
Yeah, I can't. And the weather as well. You were brave.
Don't worry about
I
the
know,
weather. I
brave.
mean, I can't even talk about my team right now. And actually, I was sitting in the car with her, and we were just talking about Bailey Bow, who's my youngest. And I knew what her answer was going to be, but I still wanted to ask her. And I said to her, "Are there ever days like where you look at Bailey and you think that she was normal?" And I could see in her face that like she wanted to like say, yeah, because I have a lot of friends that have kids my youngest age, and I see when they come round, I see what my two older ones are like with them.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable, like, because the younger ones want to play with them, whereas Bailey at the moment doesn't want to know them really. So I said to her, how does it make you feel? Because we don't really talk about it that much, and we actually should. And she said, well, yeah, if I can be honest, then yeah, I would love her to be the typical so that I could play with her because she doesn't really play with me. And she said, but you know, I love her because she's different, and I love the fact that we're also a different sort of family.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, I know it's nothing like obviously what you're saying about
but
Jake.
It's weird, but no, and it is that element. I mean, Leon, our eldest, he absolutely, there's an 8-year age gap between him and the twins.
Yeah, I've got a big age gap.
And he, from being an only child and then having two.
That take over all your time.
And they did take over.
And a PDA one too.
Yeah, and they took over when they were babies because there was two of them.
Yeah.
And, there's two of them. And then, you just think, oh, it's going to get better because they're going to be going to school, and then everything is like kind of some days revolves around Max. And Leon really struggles with that. He's like, it's like the Max show in our house some days.
Oh, I get that totally.
And then I feel, I feel so bad.
Yeah, we've had to change totally our whole life for one child.
Yeah.
What about my other two?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, sorry to interrupt, but also she said to me, I said, listen, she's not playing with you at the moment, but you never know, she might. And my 8-year-old daughter came out with, we shouldn't keep our hopes too high, Mummy.
Oh,
Please.
Honestly, I was like, what do you say to that? I said, but you've got to hope because that's all we've got.
Yeah.
But
in my heart, just crushed.
Because I said, and I said to Leon, love looks different with Maxie. With Jake, Jake and, he'll have a kind of say, Leon and Max are incredibly close, but when it's that dysregulation, when that anxiety kicks in, then Leon is just
out the way.
He's like, I'm not interested. I'm going to play on my PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
He's like, he's rude, he's mean, he hates me.
Yeah,
and
just closes
I
it
said
off.
to Leon, no, he doesn't. But in that moment, he hates everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have that a lot.
You need to decompartmentalize, what is dysregulation to, him just being your annoying little brother. Because again, they're annoying.
Yeah. My son's 11 and he's obsessed with Bailey. Obsessed. He's a real character.
Yeah,
He's also got ADHD as well, more ADD, but and he's a real sensitive little character, and he picks her up all the time and just wants her to love him. And he turns around to me and says, "Mummy, she doesn't want to know me. She doesn't love me."
Yeah,
because
and it's sad.
and then he'll try and do things with her that I do with her, and she won't do it with anyone else but
you're
me.
a safe person.
Exactly, and to try and explain that is really hard to a little boy, a little kid.
And it is really hard. And I think Leon, he thinks that Max chooses to be in that manner with him. He's like, oh, but it's all right, with you because he's all right with you. And I said, yeah, but, I am a safe person.
Yeah.
I said, and that is my
You're his
job.
constant.
I was like, I'm his mum. I said, just the same as I'm yours.
Yeah.
And I'm your person. If you're upset, you come to me first, sometimes over dad, because I am mum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that is the role that I
But
play.
the guilt we get as mothers,
Yeah.
it's
but
horrific.
yeah, it just went to so much pot, and then we basically spent a year. Well, we homeschooled him. I homeschooled him for pretty much 2 years because he was going to school, but then he was excluded for these long periods. And then he was going for an hour a day, and
there was no consistency.
there's no consistency. And in the end, I said to Dad, we need to make a decision on this, that actually he just goes for an hour a day and we keep him on roll so that as we then trying to get him into a specialist school, there is, he can be, transferred. We can just do that. And he, when we first started to properly homeschool, he was basically in burnout. You know, he refused. You know, refusing to leave the house. He didn't want to do anything. He just wanted to sit and watch TV. And burnout in PDA children is a real serious thing. You know, and it generally will be driven by school.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of people that message me on my Instagram like, "Oh my God, my child just is totally in burnout." I mean, it's really. I don't think, unless the class sizes are small, that PDA children can survive in mainstream school. Yeah. You know, they need to have a lot. The whole curriculum needs to be. It's not that they can't survive.
Yeah.
It's that the education is delivered incorrectly for their need.
Yeah. Talking about your Instagram, because I feel like we need to wrap up in a second anyway. I feel you're really growing really well. Like, I feel like this is a very a big topic now, PDA. Yeah. But I know you're offering things to people, and you're you're being a support. Tell us a bit about your Instagram page.
Well, I think I just started it because I just was thinking, you know, fucking hell, am I the only person? I feel I don't know anybody else where we live in Surrey that has got a child with PDA. Yeah. And it's also like this grey area. And I remember one day I said to Darren, my husband, I think there must be other people out there. Like, there must be. Because there's loads of other support networks for ADHD, ADD, autism. I said, but there's nothing.
So you're doing it for awareness.
For PDA, for awareness. But also, I mean, it is an incredibly lonely journey with PDA. Yeah. And I know it's a lonely journey for anybody that's got a child who's neurodivergent. But, you know, But if you want to, you have the support functions and the support networks.
Well, there's more known about it.
And then there's more, and there are more things to be able to research and stuff. And I just thought one day, I'll start a little post. And now it's kind of snowballing to this point where I am getting hundreds.
It's inundating,
hundreds of followers a day, hundreds of messages. Yeah. But what's really alarming is...
Are they asking you to diagnose their child?
No, and I've always said I am not a medical professional.
Yeah. Like, just sharing your personal story.
Very clear. And I'm not telling you, but this is my personal experience. Yeah. And, you know, I have followers and messages from people in America, Australia. I mean, it's not even diagnosed in Australia. They don't touch it. Again, in America. And it's more just to support people and help people, because it's...
And advocate.
And advocate, because there is
no one knows about it. I've got to be totally honest with you. I didn't know about it before Sophie mentioned it a few months ago.
And it's just insane.
Yeah.
I just find it really odd.
And you need the support. It's hard.
It is. You do feel so lonely during your journey. So
totally.
Do you feel like it helps?
I feel like
not
it
feeling
helps.
Alone.
And I've set up the PDA Parent Circle, and it is and somebody said, "Oh, it's a paid community," and I was like, "Well, yeah, because there is an element of." You know, it's a lot of work trying to maneuver, you know, people, but, you know, it's a monthly subscription, and there'll be, you know, I'm doing live training, there's guest speakers, because
who taught you how to deal with it?
Exactly. And and this is what nobody knows. No medical professional or PDA, even the PDA Society, say the only people that can really support you are the ones that are living and breathing every single day as a parent to a PDA child, because there are no resources out there. Yeah. That's as black and white. That is a fact.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing and you've done amazing things.
And that's why we had to have you on our show.
Because honestly,
thank you so much.
It's been
brilliant.
Beautiful.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.